Well done so far, and I don't think you'd ever thought you'd have heard that out of my mouth.
Agnew. Pan poseł Agnew.
Well, thank you for agreeing with me at last.
Thank you very much, and you'll be noticing the smiles around the room that my colleague Mr Flanagan actually half complimented the Commissioner, something that's never happened before in here. I would like to support what Mrs McIntyre had to say about the Groceries Code Adjudicator. She made a very eloquent case for that. What really worries me about this is that this activity of the European Union could undermine our Groceries Code Adjudicator, because yes, there's going to be Brexit, but there's going to be an indefinite transition period, during which time European law will still trump our own. And I see a possibility here of some of these large supermarkets saying to the Groceries Code Adjudicator, well, bye-bye, Christine, there's EU legislation coming along, we'll wait to see what happens with that. So I am concerned about that. We have made some progress in the UK with this, and I would hate to see it undermined. I want to ask the Commissioner about the P word, punishment. How are you actually going to punish these supermarkets? Or are we going to see courts in the European Court of Justice or wherever dragging on and on for years with nothing really changing? And of course, there is always a dilemma here about is the consumer going to get ripped off? Are they going to be paying more in the supermarket? Ours is a big problem. And we've got something else coming up in the UK, and that is the compulsory employee pension scheme, where all farmers and producers are having to put money into pension schemes for their employees. So are the supermarkets. Each of these parties can employ a lot of labour, and the supermarkets are trying to get their pension costs subsidised by the suppliers who have already got to try and fund their own. So there is a big problem there. Finally, I'd just like to say that opportunities do get created when food prices rise in supermarkets. Go small is the message, and I can think of one dairy producer with 70 cows who is able to turn their produce into doorstep sales, butter, milk, cheese, yoghurt, for local sales, and outdo somebody with 500 cows. Thank you.
Mr Muller and Mr Flanagan dealt with the issues around why, and Mr Agnew as well, about why a directive rather than a regulation. So I want to see this proposal really as complementary to what's happening already in the 20 member states, and also complementary to the supply chain initiative. So it's giving EU value added. And if you go through a directive, you have the principle of subsidiarity, of course, more enshrined in what we're trying to do. Some member states have gone further than others, and therefore we are able to reflect that in the form of a directive in order to give the best balance. And that's the only reason, at the end of the day, that we have gone through this proposal in this way. Mr Agnew mentioned a very important question about fines and enforcement. This particular legislation will be useless unless we have proper enforcement, and therefore we are designating a relevant competent authority with teeth in each member state, and we will be monitoring the level of enforcement in each member state. We will have annual meetings of all of the various competition authorities or whoever is going to be in charge in the member state of dealing with this legislation, to see can we not just ensure that we have a coordinated view about enforcement and fines, but also we want to see that we have the implementation of this particular legislation and best practice in every member state that can be replicated right across the European Union. And I think that the principle of subsidiarity you probably would agree with in this case, that existing arrangements in member states, we want to complement them rather than replace them. So therefore, I think the member state will be in a better position to implement the necessary fines and punishment, is the word that you used, in relation to people that go offside. And we have a good example of this already in the UK Groceries Adjudicator, where many big companies in particular now certainly have come into line, very much arising from the work of the UK Groceries Adjudicator. So this is a good example of what we could replicate in best practice right around the European Union. The consumers, there's always, this is a sort of a thing that's peddled out by people who don't want to see any action in relation to unfair trading practices, that consumers are going to be ripped off. Wherever the 20 member states have made the relevant changes to the legislation and implemented something along these lines already, there has been no increase or no evidence of any increase in consumer prices. And all of the consumer associations who made submissions as part of this public consultation supported this initiative. So I don't think consumer associations and organisations go around advocating against their own interests and their own members' interests. So there is no evidence whatsoever that this will create any increase in prices to the consumer. It creates a level playing pitch in the internal market, and this is what I think we all aspire to do. And we, not just in this legislation, but indeed in the Common Agricultural Policy and several other legislation, a European-wide effort in order to help our people.